Yeah, so it's just been about trying to find hope in really difficult circumstances and not to be broken, because what they want to do is to break us. What they want to do is to destroy our hope. And what they want, not only the Palestinians, but they want the whole world to see that they are invincible, and they want to be, they want the aggression and the violence to be the only language spoken. It's not only about us, it's also about teaching the world that this is how you solve your issues. You want an end to your conflicts, come and buy weapons from Israel. At the end of the day, it's also about Israeli propaganda machine and the way they do wars, and they introduce every single war new instruments, new technology, so that they sell it. It's like a showcase to the elite supremacists of what weapons can do, sadly, and they use it on us. And I feel that part of the challenge for us is to maintain the hope and not to be broken. And this is what destroys all of Israeli instruments. When Palestinians are still able to continue to survive, when Palestinians are continuing to walk out of the rubble and amputated, losing entire bloodlines, and still say Alhamdulillah, and we're still here. We're not gonna leave. It destroys all of their stories and theories. And I think this is revealing to the whole world the reality of Israel. It's showing them what Israel truly is as a fascist state. And it's somehow Gaza has removed this veil also about white democracies and the supremacists around the world, Europe, America, Australia, all of these colonialists. The whole theory of democracy is just something that they sell for themselves, and it's only for white people. And we can see this hypocrisy in the international courts. We can see this hypocrisy that nothing counts. If you're not white, nobody cares. And they take care of their own, and they only care about their interests. They don't care about even their people and populations living in their countries. And when you move around Europe and you move around, when I was moving around the US, it's the most impoverished places on earth. I have never seen people so miserable as I have seen in the US. Living individualized life, capsulated. Their privileges are only for 1% of the people. The rest are like rats in a machine. They have them working as machines, and trauma, even in a trauma thought, they're more traumatized probably than our kids that have experienced war, because they're so isolated. They're so isolated. They're separated from who they are. They're separated from spirit. They're not connected to anything. And this is what they want to do. And this is why they fight the tribes. This is why they've done what they've done to the Aborigines in Australia, because tribes are strong. Together we are unified. We have something that they never had, and they try to destroy that because they want us to be like them. And forever people are dissociated and searching for answers, when the reality is it's going back to your roots. It's having that connection with the earth. It's having the connection with the olive trees. It's having the connection with the land, which they never have experienced. So they don't even know what it means to name your mountain and name your river, and to know where you come from, like we the Palestinians do. So it's understanding these things that helps us in a time of genocide, to know that it's communities that make us survive. And I've seen that people in Gaza who stayed in Rafah, for example, the people who stayed in the north, in their houses, with their communities, trying to survive together, are doing much better mentally than the people who left Gaza. They're doing much better than Palestinians in diaspora, who are not actually experiencing the bombs, but they're actually having to live in so much isolation that they can't express their fear, they can't express their anger, they can't express their grief. Everything is bottled in and depressed within them and held inside them internally. And this turns into disease, this turns into all the mental health problems. Whereas the people of Gaza have each other. Even in the refugee camps, they're dividing the food between people. People are planting and giving to their neighbors what they have extra. The communities are still there. Entire families moved together. That's why when we hear entire bloodlines are getting lost, it's because the Palestinians, when they even moved, they moved together. So that they can continue to have the tribe, the community supporting each other in the middle of this struggle. And this elevates the trauma when you are surrounded by people. The more you are within community, And I've seen it here in Sarajevo when I asked, and it feels like people who left Sarajevo, all of the refugees, all of the people who were exiled from Bosnia, had a much more residual trauma than the people who actually survived under the siege in the cities. To move out of Palestine, I had to leave Palestine so that this film can be released, because I just had my baby boy born in February during this genocide, and I was terrified about the idea of being arrested again and being separated from my child. And as you know, they arrest people for putting posts on social media. They arrest people for just opening their mouth, and you're not allowed to express anything in the country. So I felt that with the repercussions of this film coming out and how much they would be upset, they might be retaliation against me and my family. And I felt the isolation. The first thing when arrived in the US, I was like, I had to go to people that I know. So I immediately went to my tribe, which is Palestinians from outside who come and see us. And I'm very much aware that I need to find my tribe. So I stay in contact with my family, with my friends from Palestine. It keeps me going. But I'm also trying to find tribes in the US. The first workshop I did was with the natives of in a farm called Khakakodile in Mendocino area, and it's on Pomo land. And the moment I saw them, I felt home. The moment they welcomed me, I felt that I have a tribe. And it's not only a tribe in the sense that they have to come from the same place as you, but it's people who understand what trauma is, people who understand, who are anti-colonial in their life, right? And with the natives, it's our pain is so severe and so similar, and the way that we connect to the earth and the land is very close, and the way we use our voices and our sounds. So I wanted to look, when I saw that, I was like, this is where I can be in community. I need to find the community which is like-minded and like-hearted and understands my pain, and I can also elevate their pain and learn from them so that we can also learn about trauma with each other, because they've experienced it, they've gone it, they've built resilience. So yeah, I'm trying to achieve that, and alhamdulillah, God's been sending amazing angels my way, and I'm sure I'm gonna have a very strong tribe. Protesting itself and being able to march and being able to be together and being loud is also how we release, and we are in community. Physically, it's what we need. We need to be together, and we need to be in places of protest and able to say no to what is happening, because if we're silent at this time, it's deadly. Home, because people know back home that at least somebody is rising for them, that they haven't been forgotten. And I remember when I was in Palestine in the middle of it, and every time I would like feel broken, I would wake up and see some pictures from protests from the encampments, the students, and see some protests coming from the UK and see Amsterdam. And it was just like, you feel that people are seeing you, seeing Jewish voices like having the protest in Congress, doing different things. And it's like, we're not alone. There are people, they can see us, we are witnessed, and they're moving, it's things are changing. The most horrific thing is if you're being slaughtered and nobody's even witnessing it. And this is what's happened to all the people from the natives. This is what happened in years of slavery. It's happening to Congo right now. It's happening in Sudan right now. It's happening in Yemen right now. And they don't even have half the attention or the focus, or people are seeing what is going on with them. And I think it's also part of our duty as Palestinians, because there's a lot of attention to our cause, to also open the eyes to the causes around us and to what is happening to other people who are suffering. Horrific. It's painful. It's horrific. But the reality of it is Israel has never in its history been closer to complete suicide. They've committed suicide with this genocide for their state. They've eliminated any chance of two-state solutions. They're annexing the West Bank. They're raging in Gaza. Everything that they have done is like a bullet in the foot, because at the end of it, where are you going to go with us? We're not going anywhere. It's arrogance. They have arrogance. Yesterday, I watched the film Tantura, and I would recommend people to watch the film, but also to read the book by Radwa Ashur, Tanturiya, to see the Palestinian narrative as well. And you see those faces of the commanders who wiped out, who were shooting, killing, raping Palestinians in 1948. We've gone through this before. You know, people forget also that Palestinians have learned some lessons. People are not leaving Gaza also because we know what happened to us in 1948 when we left and never came back. So it's these people were sitting like the soldiers who committed those crimes, giggling and laughing about what they did, about massacres that they committed, and about being able to escape without any impunity. Because until today, 74 years later, the Palestinians have not forgotten what happened in Tantura. It might be that the world hasn't seen it. It's the first time that people know that a massacre happened, but for us, we know what happened. We know what this regime started its life with. It started with an ethnic cleansing. It started with trying to wipe us out, and they haven't been able to do it. And they won't be able to do it no matter how much bombs and how much blood it's going to cost on the Palestinian side. People are adamant on not leaving their land. For me, growing up in Jerusalem, I always didn't like the energy in terms of being around the Israelis. It was always this hard reality of them they're trying to make you feel that you're not home in your own home. It's trying to always make you feel as if you're an alien in your own land. Um, and in Jerusalem, in the old city, uh, I have never connected to Al-Aqsa as much as I have been recently. Um, and I notice it's something like a chemical reaction that happens. So when I'm near, when I'm far, wherever I am, if there's something that happens in Jerusalem, it's a completely different reaction that my body has than anywhere else. Um, when I was working, when I was in Palestine, and people would always say like, "Yani, why do people move for Al-Aqsa and it's just a religious place?" And I was like, it's not a religious place. It's not only about it being a religious place. If you've never been, you won't understand it. And 2 days ago, I met with this British journalist, and she lived in Palestine. And she says she's never in her life experienced anything as holy as being in Al-Aqsa. And it's the same thing that I have. She's like, the moment something happens in Jerusalem, she feels that her heart like starts actually moving, like shaking in its place. And this is what happens to us if anything comes close to that area, if something is touching that place. Because there's a type of energy, feeling, serenity, um, openness that is present in that place that you can't experience anywhere else on earth. And I've traveled so many places. I've been to so many sacred places around the world. But there's something different about that place. And it's also because of like I go immediately when I arrive in Al-Aqsa, I go and kiss my trees, and I like, it's a relationship with the space. It's a relationship with the sanctuary itself. And I don't know how to describe it. There's nothing that verbal that I can express that would explain this relationship with this place, except that when something happens there, I'm immediately called, and there's nothing that will stop in my way. When they started putting the gates, I left everything. I was like, work, whatever. I'm there every day. I have to be there. You have to be there. It's not like a question. And this is how Jerusalemites reacted. The first thing that when they put the gates, people left their lives and they went. They started putting electronic gates at the entrances of Al-Aqsa, not only in Jerusalem, everywhere. Whoever can reach Al-Aqsa was there in order to stop any changes that will happen in that area. And the only place I miss right now is Al-Aqsa. I don't miss the rest of Jerusalem. Like it's very much specific to the to the corners of this wall, because outside of the walls, the city is harsh. It's so harsh. It's the most militarized place. They have the Israeli army on your guts. They have like chasing every Palestinian with their breath. So it's a very, very harsh place in that terms. And the only place is within the sanctuary itself that you have some peace, but outside it's immediately very strong rage that you can feel. Rage of the Palestinians for not being able to go, and rage from the Israelis who are trying to control it with anything and all the military power that they have. They're trying to take it from above and from beyond. They're digging under Al-Aqsa to destroy it from underneath. They're all over around it. They're settling everywhere around it, and they are vile in the way they do it. They're vile in the way they exist in the area, in a sense that they change the beauty of everything. So that they put the barbed wires everywhere. They put the barbed they changed my city so much, and it aggravates me. It makes me go crazy. They treat us like and they expect you to put your face down and accept humiliation. And I could never do it. I could never accept. Situation in prisons is horrific, and we are blessed with women from Iran, like Isra Jalbis, who used to send me letters when she was in prison and draw me pictures, and she was called the clown because she would make everyone around her so happy in prison despite everything she's gone through. And Lama Abu Ghosha to be making art in the middle of the house imprisonment. And we have people who've broken every way that Israel tries to use against us. We have, I don't know, like unbelievable angels that are sent to show the world what you can do in the worst and the most horrific situations. And the situations in prisons right now is the worst it has ever since the inception of the State of Israel. The prisoners are not allowed to lift their heads up for 1 second. They're not allowed to see each other. And I think that is the worst part of the torture, because we've seen they've used torture all along the history of Israel. They've raped our women, and we have documentations of that. We have the stories of Palestinian women who were raped in prison speaking out about it. It's not something that is new what they are doing. But what is new is how they've formulated a new way in torture of isolation. For the women, it's non-partisan. It's like there are different political parties, but it's a group of mothers. So Allah يحميها ويفك أسرها. Khalida Jarrar, like the mother of prisoners, is the one who cares for the prisoners when they come in. She recently also lost her daughter while she was imprisoned and unable to bury her, and now they've arrested her, and her physical health is not good, so they've isolated her so that she is not able to provide any support for any of the prisoners, as a new form of torture. They disembodied the Palestinian prisoner movement internally, so that each prisoner is isolated within their imprisonment. You no longer have the tribe of prison to take care of you. So this is why we're seeing more people coming out of prison that are completely traumatized beyond any form of support, because the first aid, which is usually given inside prison, has been taken away. As prisoners, they sit in State Iman separately. Each prisoner is on his own on the floor, not even able to know who is the person next to him. So this isolation is far worse than the torture itself, because it doesn't even allow them to process what's being happening to them. They're not allowed as a group to understand what this mass torture that they're experiencing means. There's no release for all that. There's no one to hold you. And they're doing this on purpose in order to destroy them internally, and to break down this support system that was built within the prisons. And yeah, from training dogs to rape the prisoners, sodomy, killing them, and having a society as sick as the Israeli society to protest for more sodomy to become legal. You have the Israelis protesting, asking for the soldiers who were raping and killing Palestinians to not have any, to not get charged. It's a sick society. They've destroyed themselves in a way that you can't look at them anymore and be like, in Palestine, we have the same education as the rest of the world. It's an Americanized education. It's a Westernized education. So most of our doctors, our therapists are trained by the West in the same modalities, which is talk therapy, a little bit of here sociology, psychology, social work, but it's mainly based on Western modalities. And I was re-traumatized every time that I tried to do therapy. And this is when I started realizing that this stuff doesn't work on us. It's not meant for Palestinians. It's not meant for people who live under continuous trauma. And when I experienced modalities that are more aligned, so for me, during my injury, I say that we just as we inherit the trauma from our ancestors, we also inherit the codes of healing. And I received codes of healing from my father, from my Egyptian side, which is a lot of the work on the pineal gland, work on the brain in order to get to the point of self-healing, to work on the eye of Horus, which is the pineal gland, which is the amygdala, which is the center of spirit and the connection between spirit and the body. And started from that point in my physical healing. And after that, from my mother, I inherited the Sufism because my mother's family is the Darwish, and they come from a lineage of Sufis. And I started whirling without even any connection to like thinking about this. I kind of thought about it years later. I was like, oh, maybe this is because my mother was actually a Sufi, and this because I started whirling in my house. And it started changing it started changing my body, it started changing my mind, and it got me to the point of realizing that I have trauma and confessing that I have trauma and that I need to start working on it. And that took me on to journeys in Peru, and that took me to journeys to India. And I learned Kundalini yoga from a Kundalini master who was based in the US, Kiratana Khalsa, may his soul rest in power. And from these modalities and learning different types, I decided I was called to start Catharsis Holistic Healing with my teacher, who was pushing me like, this is something that you have to do. You need to bring this healing to the Palestinians. And I started with the children in Nabi Saleh, where I was injured, and the children that I've known for years. And I wanted to see if it actually works. And I saw it, I saw the effect from the first session, and I was like, okay, there's something here to explore. And I wanted to explore more, so I learned more modalities. Emotional freedom technique has been amazing. It's a tapping technique that is based on working on the energy points in the body. And most of the techniques that I use are based on the body. So just as the trauma happens in the body, the release happens in the body. The body keeps the score, if you know the book. It's pretty much that. The trauma is held within the body. It's held within the electricity. It's held in each and every organ. And I saw how when I was working, even before getting into therapy, when I was working with the mothers of martyrs and mothers of prisoners, they always had issues in their chest. It's either asthma, it's problems breathing, health. Many of the people from Gaza, for example, that I worked with had issues with the kidneys, had issues with the adrenals, had issues with the thyroids, autoimmune diseases. And I just kind of started connecting the dots and understanding that this is because of this. And from that experience, I wanted to share it. And that's how I started Catharsis Holistic Healing. It's not an organization. I wish it was. Maybe I can get it to become an organization now that I'm outside of Palestine. But in Palestine, that any work that has to do with former prisoners is illegal. So most of my work was done with the former prisoners. We never take any donations from or EU or anyone who wants to tell us how or who we're allowed to work with. We would sell T-shirts so we can have retreats for the kids. We would ask private donors to support. And the way that it immediately clicked was when I started also understanding the power of the language. So I did sound healing for me when I was injured, and I went back to walking from my spinal injury. And the Western medicine until today thinks that like my spine is still severed. But I started seeing how we are brainwashed in everything from this Western society. That they don't colonize you only physically. So they colonize you and they bring in these methods into control your brain and to occupy your brain so that you become materialistic and you become an asset to them. You become a slave to buying. In Sufism, for example, it's not only about, so I didn't start from a place of religion. I was separated from religion at a very young age, being brought up in a communist and atheist family. I came into religion because of a connection that I felt as a child that was disconnected, and from my need when I was injured to immediately connect back to that source, which gives me the power. And then when I started doing the research, I wanted my scientific brain, which comes from my parents, was like, hey, you have to prove it, right? So when I did the research on the Sufi whirling, it's not about just reiterating or the faith, or it actually, when you're in that kind of movement in going in whirling, there's electricity flowing according to MRI research from your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala. You're reconnecting the wires in your brain, and you're bringing back the person's ability to build resilience in their brain, in the prefrontal cortex, to take the decisions from the prefrontal cortex, which, the Western medicine after years tells you, yeah, this is where you take the conscious decisions. Of course, in Sufism, in all of the ancient Buddhism, it's heaven and hell that you live through. And if you're living through your amygdala, which is your fight-flight mode, you're in hell. If you're able to take decisions from your conscious brain, then you're living in heaven. And it's about electricity that moves through when you're doing certain moves with your mouth and you're chanting. You're moving certain jaws in your throat. You're moving certain in your jaw. You're moving certain vocal areas that are resonating and creating a vibration that affects the electricity in your brain. So it's also very scientific. But it's scientific and spiritual and physical, and this is why I call it holistic, because you can't look at an individual without knowing their history, their math, their belief system, and where they come from. And the difference in working with the kids in Gaza is they're much stronger, they're much more resilient in a way than other kids around the world, because they've had to grow up so much faster. And there's a lot of the somatics is easy to, like, they have more somatic expressions. So bedwetting, stuttering, inability to speak. You can see the trauma is much more physical and very expressive in itself, because they were taught to be very strong and powerful and that they are resilient. So they bottle it up immediately in their bodies, and then it reacts stronger. So we've seen much more in the terms of coming out physically. I've seen also from the families who left Gaza and are relocated right now through the genocide in Ramallah, I've seen diseases that I've never in my life heard about. I've seen people with like multiple kinds of types of cancers in one body. I've seen something called the Bahjat disease that I've never heard about. It's an autoimmune firing disease. So there's like much more physical onslaughts and like things that are coming at you. The one thing that I noticed from speaking to the therapists that work with them is that the techniques work with them much faster as well. So like bedwetting, they were able to stop it through emotional freedom technique, through tapping. The kids were able to recover. Some of the kids who weren't able to sleep and had insomnia for years were able to sleep again. From the ones that are now in Egypt, we've noticed that their sleeping patterns are changing and the aggression is changing through using these somatic experiencing. So I think it's so important when working with people in Gaza right now or coming out of Gaza to work on the body. It's paramount, and it's very important also to work with their belief systems. So the kids, for example, when they came out and were trying to do tapping, so you're tapping and you're saying like, despite what I have experienced, I'm strong. And they take over, they start saying, because I am from Gaza, I'm the most powerful kid. Because we're from Gaza, we survived the war and we can survive anything. And they start like chanting, and they take it to a higher level of strength and intensity than we than we're used to. And it's empowering for the therapists. And I found we need like a different kind of level of therapists to work with children who come out of Gaza. And not only Gaza, in the West Bank, I've had many, like through this volunteer program, we would send people to therapists who are working in somatics or something related. And the therapist would start crying. The therapist would completely be unable to support because of hearing the stories of the people. And they would have, the therapist would get into freeze responses. And the people who are going for therapy are like, but I didn't even feel it was that bad. Why is this person like reacting? And we need people who are of different, yeah, of not a different, but yani, of an understanding of what it means to be a Palestinian undergoing this and what faith plays a role. Because people come to you and they're like, yeah, I lost 10 people in my family. They were taken out. Alhamdulillah, I have 2 kids left. And it's like, some of it is dissociation. Some of it is also pure faith and belief that they are sitting with God, that their sons and daughters are in a resting place in heaven, and that this is their role as protectors of the land. This is the service that you do in order to protect your land. There's no argument about it. So coming at it from a mentality of, oh, the horror of what you have gone through doesn't really help the person. It destabilizes the system, which is, and they need their mechanisms to hold through. So I tell people always, like, think of the children in Silwan. In Silwan, if you're a child and you're surrounded by soldiers in Jerusalem all the time, if you have a normal child's reaction of when you're in danger, you run, you're going to be dead. You're going to be shot in your back and you're dead. If you look at most of the pictures of the boys who are stepped on a wall, they're laughing at the soldiers and they're like, whatever. And they're just held. And some of them, you can see a freeze response, but it's the freeze response that saved them. God gave us also this amygdala for a reason. Yani, we don't mess with it. Because if you take away that normative reaction, which is to be in a freeze response when the soldier stops you, you're killing them. Effectively, you're killing this child. Because the next time a soldier comes, points a gun, that child will run and he will be dead. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when thinking about therapy in our context.